Thanks, Reed. Thanks for inviting me. Hey, guys. Um, so this is the first presentation I've done in quite some time. And I have not been working, much since December. I closed the Relapse Prevention Center in Charlotte at Christmas time last year. So I'm going to take this hour to share with you what I devoted my life to, which was relapse prevention therapy, specifically the role core issues play in chronic relapse. That's my background, is working with chronic relapsers, impaired professionals, people with complicated recoveries. That's, I think, pretty early on in my career. What I was really interested in is people who were having trouble with just doing the traditional stuff and maintaining sobriety. And what I mean by that is they go to treatment, they go to aftercare, they have sponsors, they went to meetings, and they're still struggling with alcohol and drug use. And I think the thing that first inspired me was an alcoholic who I had for a client at the Council on Alcoholism in Southeast Ohio, 1982. The guy had been in and out of the Alcoholics Anonymous. He had been to treatment twice. And here he was with this novice counselor, poor guy. And I remember going to the staff meeting and saying, okay, guys, look, this guy's doing everything. I don't know what we're going to offer him. He goes to an AA meeting almost every day. He talks to his sponsor, usually in person, almost every day. He's been to treatment. He can quote the big book. And he's back with 2 weeks of sobriety. So I need you guys, because I don't know what I'm doing. And I said to my experienced people on staff, help me. I don't know what to do. And they kept saying, okay, is he going to an AA meeting every day? Or is he really talking to his sponsor every day? And they were looking at what is he doing wrong? And that struck me as, wait a minute. So what you're saying is, if they do all these things, that's the cure. And I remember it's, like the emperor has no clothes, the young one, people are like, well, no, there's no cure. And I said, well, you just told me there was. If he does A, B, C, and D, he should not be drinking. So that was what really got me interested in beginning to dig into what about people who aren't responding? And then I wound up hooking up with Terry Gorski, who is already doing work in relapse. And let me tell you how controversial the whole subject of relapse prevention and relapse prevention therapy was in the early 80s. First time I heard Terry Gorski speak, and he was talking about relapsers, about half the audience, now these were counselors, clinicians, half the audience put their notebooks together and walked out of the room. They didn't even, you weren't even allowed to say it. So even in the field back then, there was a tremendous closed-minded ideas about what causes people to fail at recovery. So I've spent my life dedicated to understanding that in different people. There's lots of reasons for relapse. What I've done to do today is I'm going to tell you about 4. The 4 major reasons for relapse. The first one is failure to complete the first step. That's how you know it in AA. How we know it clinically is we say that the person has not transitioned into recovery. What that means is, well, let me put it to you this way. Prior to recovery, addicts and alcoholics believe, I'm a normal user using socially, and my life problems don't have anything to do with my alcohol and drug use. Okay. Prior to recovery, that's how an addict and alcoholic can stay out. That's how they can continue to use. That's how they can continue to pay consequences. Because their brain's telling them, hey, you have to drink because your life sucks so bad. You have to do drugs because of all the problems you have. The brain does not allow them to connect the alcohol and drug use as causing the life problems. They actually see it in reverse. So until that begins to chip, till there's some chips in that wall, that addict begins to say, oh, wow, DUIs are about drinking. It's because, believe it or not, I've had alcoholics tell me the DUIs don't have anything to do with drinking. The cops in our town laid out for this one guy. They had his plates, they had the make of his car. They waited and waited for him to show up. And then they ran him down. And so, as long as the brain is doing that, there's no hope for recovery. I don't care how many treatment centers you put them in. I don't care how great their counselor is. I don't care how great their sponsor is. If that person still believes that those things aren't linked, there's no hope. So the first thing that has to happen is the addict, usually through painful consequences, finally begins to connect. Daggone, these life consequences are related to my alcohol and drug use. Well, then the next part of the pre-treatment process happens. Once they understand that, the second thing that happens is that they try to control their use. Now that I know this, now that I know drinking causes DUIs, I'm not going to drink that way anymore. I'm off the hard stuff. I'm just going to drink beer. I'm going to try to cut back to 10. So the control strategies start. And believe me, this is an important part of the addiction process. The need to try to control things, to continue to control your life and control your drinking or your drug use. So this second part's really important. There can be no permanent abstinence until the addict knows, both here and here, I cannot control this drug. And when I try, I wind up losing control and the consequences keep coming. That has to occur. So part one is, wow, my problems are connected to my alcohol and drug use. That's the first awareness. Part two, no matter how hard I try to control, I still lose control most of the time. And the consequences keep coming. So now you think we're almost there. Oh no, there's one more part. Once the addict goes, oh, okay, I can't control it. I've tried everything I know, I can't control it. Then they go into what we call the third and final phase of this pre-treatment process. And this is called controlled abstinence. Okay, I'm just going to swear it off. I'm not using anything. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to smoke pot. I'm not going to do drugs. I'm not going to do anything for the next 6 weeks. And that's going to prove to my husband and to my boss and to me that I'm not an alcoholic, because an alcoholic couldn't do that. So what they want is they want to go a period of time of abstinence to prove to everyone that they're in some kind of they're having some kind of control over it. The problem is they don't make any changes in their life. There's no program underneath them. They're just abstaining. So after a period of time, they will fail. And guess what? Consequences come back. So those are the three ahas an addict has to have and actually come to understand at the heart level before recovery is even possible. I tell you this because this is important. Everything I tell you from this point on does not apply to this group. Okay? I'm going to be talking about relapsers from this point on. But I had to explain, I'm not talking about this group that are still struggling with the first step, still struggling with the control issues. You have to be in recovery from something in order to relapse from it. And they're not in recovery. They're just experiencing some periods of abstinence while they work this thing out their way. That's not recovery, that's abstinence. And alcoholics and drug addicts can abstain, especially though, let me put it this way. When you see people picking up white chips, not their first white chip, number 2 and above, most of them fall in this category, the not ready yets. They're still struggling with control, okay? They've had periods of abstinence. They suffer from back disease. I want my car back. I want my job back. I want my wife back. That's what they're really suffering from. That group of people are not appropriate for relapse prevention. They're not in recovery. We still haven't gotten them into recovery. So I tell you this part because I have to take them out of the picture. They're not this group that this is for. Now, when you see people picking up white chips, the smaller subgroup of people picking up white chips are relapsers. They understand they're addicted. They're past any notion they can control it. That's not the goal anymore, and they're still freaking using. Okay? That's a smaller subgroup. And the fortunate thing is they're treated the same as the other group, and they're not. The first thing I say to somebody in group 2 who's had some sobriety and lost it is, have you ever thought about the possibility that you're not doing anything wrong, but that something else is going wrong? So I think it's important, that's who we're talking about from this point on. So that is the number one reason for relapse, even though it's not relapse, or we're dealing with people who they're in the process of moving towards recovery and they're not there yet. It's an important phase, but they're not there yet. Second most common reason for relapse. Okay, listen to me now. Listen to me. Dysfunctional sexual relationships, particularly in early recovery. Yeah, I said it, and that probably slapped a couple of you right in the face. That is the second most common reason people would come to visit me at the Relapse Prevention Center. I would hear pretty early on, I was sober for 9 months, and then I relapsed. Well, what happened? Okay, well, my girlfriend left me, the one I met in rehab. We moved in together as soon as we got out of rehab. And so that would be, early recovery is not a good time to find a partner. And the reason is you're still too sick. And so you're only attracting unhealthy people to you. If you will wait a little bit, that's why they ask you to wait at least a year to start dating. It's not just to be mean. It's to allow you to really grow emotionally and spiritually so you can attract a healthier person towards yourself. So nobody listens to that. It's a waste of my breath. The third most common reason is core issue triggers. And that's what we're going to spend the day talking about. But I want to bring up one more chronic reason for relapsing: complacency. And the longer you're sober, the more you have to worry about that. I can remember going to AA meetings in the 80s, and that was a stodgy bunch back then, let me tell you what. And once in a while, somebody in the meeting would start to talk about how great they were doing. And at the same time, everyone noticed they were missing meetings, a lot of meetings. And the favorite saying from the old timers used to be, well, Sam, You sound well. And that was an insult because once you're well, you don't need any of this anymore, which is right where your addicted brain wants you. So well that you don't need so many meetings. So well that you don't really need to check in with your sponsor. So well that you don't need to hang out with recovering people anymore. You got so much else going on. You got kids and soccer and oh God, that's just what the addict in you wants. So when you get complacent, and you're going to have times, all of you are going to have times where you're complacent. I want you to be nervous about that, and I want you to ask people for help. Left to your own devices, when you're alone with that addicted brain, you are alone with the enemy. And that's what the program really is for. It's not to tell you, not to make your life miserable. It's there to help you understand what the disease is doing to you every single day. You get up every day with a brain that wants to use. And that's the truth until the day you die. And I don't care how long you're sober, there's a lunatic. It's a small part of your brain, but it's powerful. There's a lunatic that lives in there that wants to drug now. So when you recognize that, you don't have to be afraid of it. When you're honest about that and you tell on it and you tell your sponsor, you talk about it, you take the power out of it. You take the power away from it. That's the antidote. All right. Core issues. People don't understand what core issues are. Core issues think they're maybe family belief systems. They're not. A core issue is unique and specific to you. And everyone has a core issue. This is not for addicts. I do psychotherapy. It happens to be with recovering people. But the psychotherapy I do works with anyone. So everyone has a core issue. It's not because addicts are crazier. All the non-addicts have core issues too. That's the first thing I want you to start with. So knowing your core issue and understanding how it manipulates you can bring you a lot of serenity in your life as you learn to manage it. So what is it? It's your number one serenity disruptor. Core issue trigger, things that trigger your particular core issue, is your number one serenity disruptor. And I believe any recovering person without serenity is vulnerable to the drug. The whole point of your program is to help you maintain a sense of peace and serenity in your life, some contentment. If you don't have that, the addict is going to start talking and it's going to start making sense. So that's why you do all the things you do, to create some peace and some contentment in your life. The core issue trigger is one of your worst emotional states. When it takes a hit, you start to drop into your relapse dynamic. This is true of everyone. If your sponsor's been sober 15 years, he or she has a core, they get triggered, they drop into their relapse dynamic. It's just that they circumvent it before they get to the bottom, which is where they would drink or drug. Okay? So it's more than negative self-talk. It's specific negative self-talk to you about you. So if you're going to write something down, write this down. Negative self-talk about me, to me, from me. Okay, it's an inside job. So it's that thing you say to yourself. So, we say, oh, my wife triggered me. I came home and she got all over me because I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And, and I was so triggered up, she just triggered me. Well, what she triggered in you, let's say, your core issue is that you're inadequate. What she triggered was your inadequacy button. She didn't place that there. She simply said, lawn's still not mowed. You're the one that lost your mind. Does that make sense? When people hit our core, it's our core. It goes off in us. It makes us crazy. And we behave crazy. They didn't do it. They don't even, most of the time, don't even know where the wire is they stepped on. But they step on it and we go off. So again, this is true about everyone. Here's the definition. I want you to have the definition, and this is worth writing down too. A core issue is a mistaken belief, and underline the word mistaken. Mistaken belief about yourself learned in childhood. Mistaken belief about yourself learned in childhood. So your parents don't give you a core. Now they could. If you were raised by brutal parents who, let's say, told you every single day that you were stupid, you might grow up with the core issue of stupid, but maybe you wouldn't. But you might. But a core issue occurs in everyone between the ages of 4 and 8. We take it. It's not given to us. We take it. So there's no one to blame here. Here's why it happens. Prior to the age of 4, children believe we're all the same. We're all smart. We're all funny. We're all popular. We are all strong. We're all good looking. That's why 0 to 4 can play with anybody and anyone, and it just doesn't matter. They think, and they're in a little utopia. We're all the same. It's great. Between the ages of 4 and 8, we begin to wake up. Brain develops more, and we begin to see, oh, wow, I'm not the fastest kid. Johnny can outrun me. Oh, wow, I'm not the smartest kid. Melody always gets the smiley face on her papers. She gets more of them than I do. So I'm not as smart as her. So what happens is the kid begins to look around, and the first time it comes up short somehow from its utopia, it goes, oh, it starts to wonder, oh gosh, am I weak? I lost arm wrestling to 2 people in a row. I must be weak. And then he goes home from school thinking, am I weak? And then his bigger brother pounds him a good one when he gets home and says, you wuss. And the kid goes up to his room and goes, oh my God. And so what happens is then he begins to wonder. And the wonderment starts making him look at everything in his life through that prism of, am I weak? And so every time he comes up short, he can't shoot baskets as well as this other kid. He can't beat up his bigger brother. He's afraid of somebody down the street. My God. Oh, and it's just sitting in him. It's true. Okay? And what happens from that point on is the rest of his life, he measures himself against those feelings of weakness and does a good job of, like the Terminator eye, there's an example, there's an example. So everything that happens in his life gets seen through that prism. I like to say the thing about a core belief, and it's a belief, by the way, it's not the truth, but because we believe things, they might as well be true, because we live as if they are the truth. When you believe something, this is the human condition. We get up every day and look for evidence that we're right about it. And if it's not there, we create it. It's true. This is why you can't talk about religion or politics in mixed company. These are beliefs. No one's there to really exchange ideas. Nobody's there to learn a thing. Nobody wants to learn anything. They're already learning. They're there to bring you into their belief. They couldn't care less about your belief. So politics and religion are those two things that we can't talk about because nobody's there to learn. The core issue is the same way. It gets up every day and turns on the channel of television that tells it what it wants to hear. You are weak, and here's how I'll tell you you're weak. When your boss came in the other day and told you such and such, you cowered like a big weed. Okay, that's the kind of talk, that's the self-talk that comes from somebody, particularly a male, that would have the weak core. Okay, now there's lots of cores. Again, mistaken belief that we live on like it's real, and when this button gets triggered in us, we go crazy. We start to decompensate, we drop into our relapse dynamic. We become sicker and sicker if we don't find a way out of it. So I feel like I've covered a lot, so I want to actually, before I finish the last part of the presentation, I want to stop for a second and see if anybody has questions. So that's great question. We cannot get rid of our cores. They went in our brain when we were little, and it's almost like the brain grew around it. You know, you develop something at 4 or 5 years old, at 50, it's part of you. But once you recognize what your core is, and you identify the particular self-talk statement you like to use when it's triggered, and you use the management strategies, like the trigger card that you have, George, that I'm going to tell them about at the end. You use the trigger management strategies. Over time, you will get harder and harder to trigger, but you will never not be triggerable, and that will always be your Achilles heel. Here's the thing, it's in the subconscious, so probably you need to do some therapy. It's not likely to come out anywhere else. It's in the subconscious, so a therapist is going to have to identify it and then bring it to your conscious. And they do that through listening to you, capturing your self-talk statements, talking to you when you've been triggered. Then they'll see it. For instance, Fred, I've had people come into my office and go, oh, I know what my core is. And they, you know, like first or second session, I'm not good enough. And I said, okay, well, now we know what it isn't. Okay, because this thing does not want to be found. This is a belief. It does not want to be changed. It does not want to be altered. It does not want to be found. So it will start throwing stuff out there to distract you. Everybody wants to be not good enough. Well, that is very rarely someone's core. Rarely. So it's uglier than that. It's the thing that just, here's how, let's start with this. When you go through your lives, things upset you all the time. Those aren't core triggers. Somebody cuts off in traffic and scares you and pisses you off. You go home and your daughter still hasn't cleaned up her room. And that is so frustrating. You go to work and your boss tells everybody's working Saturday. Oh, God. So these are all upsets, but they're not core triggers. Core being that it hit your personal core and made you go into your most dysfunctional state. Here's how you know what's a core trigger. Some people call it a gut punch. I say it feels like that. Something happens or something said to you and you get that sick sinking feeling. And then you obsess on it. Okay. You can't hardly process anything else except what was said or done. And you're really upset by it. That's a core issue hit. It's not a frustration or an upset. It's a dysfunctional state. And you go there every time this button's hit. Exactly right. And that's the hardest part to get a handle on when you start this work. That's the hardest part, because remember, the one comment I made a minute ago was you get up every day and look for evidence that you're right. And that means every mistake I make, I translate into this core. And if it's not there, I create it. And that's what you're talking about. If I go too long in my life without somebody hitting that core, that I'm bad, that I'm stupid, that I'm weak, that I'm a disappointment. If something doesn't happen to hit that core, my brain, the subconscious part, not even the conscious part, the subconscious part will start to put me in situations or attract people to me that will trigger it. For instance, the person that you're in love with, your sexual partner, you fell in love with for a lot of reasons, but they can also trigger your core. If they weren't able to hit your core, you wouldn't be with them. So we are attracted to people that trigger us too. For instance, a physician I worked with years ago, his core issue was that he was stupid. And I know some of you are going, oh, come on. This isn't intellectual, it's emotional. So he, since the age of 5, has believed he was stupid. And when I asked him to tell me about your wife, second or third session, his comment was, she's brilliant. Now, why would that be? Because a stupid person needs to marry somebody smarter than them so that they will regularly feel stupid. We have to be right about the core. We have to be right about all our beliefs. That's why MSNBC and Fox exist. We have to be right about our beliefs. We want to be fed. And this is the same thing. It's the same thing. It's MSNBC on steroids. You turn the channel on every day. I'm a disappointment. See that? I should have that done already. It's not done. You know why? I'll tell you why. So that's how the cores work. And a big one that we haven't talked about, a big core, the number one core in the recovering community. And I doubt this is true for the non-recovering community, but the number one core in the recovering community is abandonment, fear of abandonment. And often that comes from painful childhood experiences where either mom died, dad left, somebody was drug addicted or alcoholic or mentally ill, or just absent, missing in action a lot. Those things will create fear of abandonment in a child. Remember, this gets created between the ages of 4 and 8. That's when a child would think, I'm on my own. I got to take care of me. I got to do this. That's where the fear of abandonment would start. Well, there's probably 25 that you hear regularly, 10 that you hear constantly. But you know, why I hate to do a lot of telling people is because their brain will pick the one it's not. Tell them that's what it is, okay, to keep them away. So here's what I'd rather do instead. I'd rather tell you there's 3 categories. One is performance-based cores. You get triggered usually based on your performance, how you did or didn't do, how you stack up, how you measure. And then another category is shame-based cores. Things like that is a shame-based core. And the third category is fear-based cores. That's where abandonment is. Abandonment, fear of abandonment is just, it's freaking fear. The pain of getting hurt again and again and again. It's fear. It traumatizes people. Here will help you. Like you do, then when you get really upset and you obsess, when you feel the gut punch, when you know your brain has been hijacked and you're dysfunctional again, what are you saying to you about you? What did you do to cause this? That's the core talking. And even though you might not get right to the core, you will get to its language. You will know what it's saying to you. You moron, I can't believe you did that again. God, how stupid. That kind of stuff is what you need to be, just jot it down. The next time you take a gut punch, don't focus on the person who you think did it to you, because they didn't. Turn in and say, what is wrong with me? What am I telling me is wrong with me? Now, I'm trying to show you ways to get to your core. Take the next 2 or 3 hits and write down what you're saying to yourself. A theme emerge. You can't do it with just 1 hit. You're going to have 2 or 3 hits. Write down in quotes the ugly crap you're saying to yourself. Oh, I see some other people I know. Okay, once you've done that, now you have to go back to childhood. Between the ages of 4 and 8. I need you to get back there. Remember yourself as a little kid, preschool, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. During those years, I think that's 5, 6, 7, and 8. During those years, think about bad days and what you said to yourself. And those 2 things have to link up, because that's where it started. So do 2 or 3 triggers in the here and now, write the language down, then do some meditation and go back to your childhood. Remember some critical experiences, like maybe you got up in front of the class and you said the word wrong and everybody laughed. So I'm giving you some things that you can do to find it. But really, a therapist can help you. If you've been sober for a little bit, and what I mean by a little bit, 6 months, you go see a therapist to try to find your core. You don't hear about this in treatment because you need to focus on how to get sober. People will come to me for therapy, and then they'll say, how come nobody ever told me about this? I went to treatment for 12 weeks. Well, because this is not what your treatment was about. Your treatment was, the most important thing you can do is get sober. So that has to come first. And then you can do this kind of work. Spend some time thinking. 5, 6, 7, and 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. There has to be some moments there you remember as a kid talking to yourself. And you just got to grab that self-talk. Just snippets will do. What you say to yourself about you. That's the important thing. When people first start group with me, they'll say, my wife triggered me the other night. And initially I let that go until they begin to realize, no, I trigger me. She didn't give you that core. You're looking for it. Yeah, because people will ask me this a lot. They'll say, aren't core issues just character defects? And the answer is no. Core issues aren't character defects. we all have a bunch of character defects and we work on them and hopefully we're growing and learning. But the core issue would have been with you had you never picked up a drink. It has nothing to do with your addiction. All the people you love have a core issue. So I don't know, did that answer, Reed? It's it's a kind of at a loss for words. It's nothing that undercuts anything from AA. As a matter of fact, managing core issues, the program will really help you with. But it's not there designed to do deep psychotherapeutic work with you. It's there to do emotional and spiritual work with you. I love that you're bringing this up because people get triggered all the time. Their core gets hit all the time and they drop part of the way into their relapse dynamic, but they find their way out before they go to the bottom, which is to drink. And so you've been in and out of your triggered state. Did you say 8 years of sobriety? So you have gone in and out of this triggered state, in and out of your relapse dynamic, but your program and the things you've done so far have kept you from getting clear to the bottom, which would be a drink. But you're right. Your vulnerability is high when your sexual relationship triggers you. That's where you're the most vulnerable, and vulnerability is so triggering to an abandoner. Oh, right? It's the worst. And so you're right to be concerned. So the thing that you know that, your sponsor needs to know that, your recovery team needs to know that. And knowing it and using the trigger management techniques can help you get through a triggered state without drinking. This was the work I used to do with people. Loved it, still love it. It just makes my heart go pitter-patter to see some of you guys on here. And this is what I'm trying to teach 2 counselors now, and eventually be 3 counselors at Pavillon, so that somebody can try to carry this work on. And it won't be in their inpatient, it'll be in their outpatient. So, because you have to meet criteria to get in this group. You know what it is? You got to be through the first step. So, that's what I've been trying to do. So on Monday nights, which I went to group for a half hour tonight and I left them, that's what we're doing in there. I'm doing a group for Pavillon, but they're not mine. And what I'm really there doing is teaching the counselors how to do what I'm doing. So if you know you've been triggered, what do? And remember, I don't like people using the word trigger for everything that happens to them. Oh, I got triggered the day when I got cut off in traffic. No. The big one is the trigger. The big one. This is a threat to my mental health. Usually doesn't, but could threaten my sobriety. So there's a process. The first thing you have to do is know you're triggered and admit it. Admit it to yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else. You just have to say it to yourself. I've been triggered. My core's been hit. That's my bad spot. Daggone it. Now I'm all screwed up in the head. Just admit it. We all have it, so it's okay to just admit it. Do the deep breathing you're taught in meditation. The kind where the lungs completely expand. Breathe. 2 or 3 deep, long breaths, letting it out slow. So acknowledge it to yourself, breathe, and then start some self-talk. This thing I believe about myself is a lie. For abandoners, just because somebody's pissed doesn't mean they're leaving. Just because I make a mistake doesn't mean I'm stupid. So you have to do the self-talk. On mild triggers, the first 3 are enough. Admit it to yourself, breathe, and self-talk. On moderate triggers, after you do that, you then need to pick up the phone and call someone, talk it through. The important thing is to emote. If you're angry, get angry. If you're sad, cry. Get the negative emotion out. If you hang up the phone and you're still triggered, call someone else. Do it again. This is your danger zone. Get out of this triggered state. Now, after you've called someone, you can pray because you're sane enough and calm enough to ask your higher power for help. And meditate, which is to just get quiet to see if you can hear or feel the answer. And if you've taken a big hit, the last part of this is to try to do natural mood elevators. And natural mood elevators are things that make you laugh or things that make you feel relaxed. So things that make you laugh, funny movies, funny people. If you've been triggered really bad and one of your buddies is funnier than all get out, pick up the phone and call him, hoping he will make you laugh. Laughing out loud starts returning the brain. This is actually brain chemistry, all of this. And then things that make you relax. Meditation, soft music, long hot bath. That's your management strategy. I miss all of you. Thanks for coming. It's so great to see your faces.